Lesson 4.4, which is a review, at least part of it is, from lesson 0.
Wait, I thought we never finished.
No, we didn't really do a new lesson. We answered questions.
Yeah.
4.4, which is entitled Complex Numbers. One thing that is looking up for you ladies is that I have decided that I teach homeschool classes, and I am my own boss. So if I want to wear a t-shirt, I can wear a dadgum t-shirt. So possibly in this semester it'll be cooler than it was the first semester. Oh my gosh, you are like a negative Nancy, girl. Calm down. What would be a synonym of negative that starts with an E? That's not exactly right, but it is funny, especially coming from sister.
There's a big number that I know of, or I mean a big word.
A big number that, yeah, of course. All right, so the thing about so we did i's, right? We did all that stuff. We did that I equals the square root of -1, I squared equals -1, etc. We looked at all of that. We looked at the pattern and all of those things. Some of these early lessons, we kind of combined that with simplifying radicals, which we've kind of done before, but we're going to walk through it slow enough that we do well. So we're going to jump in with some examples, okay? How's that sound? Grand? Don't everybody be thrilled at once.
I want a set of washi tape.
How do you feel about that?
I don't see any that start with an
How does that make you feel?
Well, I don't
No,
have
I used to do that in public school all the time. Some I brought a new
Grab their hand, put it on the table, and stab it back their hand.
Example 1, the instructions say simplify. And the problem is the square root of -1. -1. Ha! That would be easy. It would be equals I. Moving on with my life. Square root of -27 is what I was trying to write. Okay. So what we've used this before. We've done a lot of this before. But the theorem we're using, the idea we're using is that if we have the square root of a times b, we can separate that into the square root of a times the square root of b. That's what we're ultimately using to do these. If we have multiplication, we can split it up, right? So what we can split this into is the square root of -1 times the square root of 27, right? Because -1 times 27 is -27. Everybody following so far? Nothing crazy-fied? Okay. Right? Now, the square root of -1 we know probably from our review at the beginning, but in case we don't, we'll put a little definition up here that the square root of -1 equals I. Okay? We won't walk through all the pattern bits yet. Sorry, I have to respond to this. Time sensitive. Okay.
page 41.
Everything I do is time sensitive.
That's lies.
If I don't do it, then I will forget about it immediately.
That's why you need some way to keep up with your thoughts. Have y'all have seen the urgent and important quadrant concept? If you haven't, you should look it up. It's a good way of thinking and handling things. There are things that are urgent and important, but not everything is both.
Wait. What?
Okay. Square root of negative, true. But not, yeah, we're going deeper than we have time. This is not that class. Maybe I should have taught that at Grace. That would have been smart.
Wait, what are your classes at Grace about?
It's basic electronics. It's going to be very project based. It'll be pretty fun. There in the high school one, there will be a teensy bit of math. Not much, but a teensy bit. Teensy bit.
So which day is it not go for that one? I was going to.
We'll get to play with Play-Doh 1 or 2 days. We'll make things light up and make sounds and all kinds of stuff. It'll be fun. It'll be really good. They're the same. They're both. I think that's all they put me in is they gave me a high school and a junior high basic electronics. I think. Rochelle is teaching something else. I don't remember which one she's teaching. Oh, she's doing it's Kiva Planks, puzzles, something. I don't really know exactly. She's a helper in the Kiva Planks class, and she thought, high schoolers would have fun doing this with puzzles and whatever else, and so she's making a class with that, basically. It's also probably fun. Okay, so square root of negative 1 is I. We just said it is, right?
Wait a minute.
So if we just say
There's
it,
no
then
way
it
cameras come?
Sometimes, if it's literally the definition.
It's true.
Okay, now, the 27 is not a perfect square, right? Square root of 27 is like 3 point, right? It's not anything, or maybe it's 4 point something. I don't know. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter.
Wouldn't it be like 5?
Yeah, sure, whatever. I don't care. It's not the point. The point is it's not perfect, right? However, it has a perfect square inside of it.
Yes.
You need to know your perfect squares, okay? So let's kind of list off your perfect squares. 25 is a perfect square, but it doesn't go into 27, but it is one, absolutely. 27 times what equals, 25 times what equals 27? There she goes. Okay, so what's 2 times 2? 4, what's 3 times 3? 9, 4 times 4? 16, and then,
25.
and then
36.
49, and then 8 times 8 is 64, 81, 100, etc., right? That's plenty. You don't need more than that. Honestly, you could probably memorize through like right here and be probably fine. But if you have at least through there, then you're very easily fine. What?
But all the ones past that I have memorized.
Well, I don't think that's quite true, but you probably have a few of them. I don't know about all of them, because that would mean that you have infinite memory, which is impossible. Okay.
The ones that you put on the thing.
What is happening? Dismiss.
1 and 144.
Go away.
Smart you are, there's only so much you can.
Okay, so one of these goes into 27. Which one of these goes into 27? 9 does.
9, that one.
Okay, so we can split the square root of 27 into the square root of 9 times the square root of what? 9 times what equals 27?
That would be 3.
It'd be 3, right? What's the square root of 9? It is 3. So this number simplified is 3i times the square root of 3. There are no perfect squares that go into 3, so this is as simple as it gets.
Yeah, the square root of 3 is like 1.5, and that doesn't work.
Something like that.
So that's
Okay.
Wait, why is it 3i?
As opposed to I3,
Yeah, it's 1.5.
what do you mean?
What is that 3 doing here?
What's the square root of 9?
3.
That's what the 3 is doing there.
But that doesn't have anything to do with I.
Well, the I just came down.
Yeah, the ice is traveling.
So is your question then, this is what and it may or may not be, why is it 3i as opposed to I3? Is that what you're asking? Yes, no, maybe. No, yes. Because we usually write the letter second, not separate. So I just brought the number out to the front because that's how we like to see it.
But there's only one.
I square root 3. I know. I square root 3 square root 3.
Because, and that one has an easy explanation. The letter thing is like whatever. But the reason why, and this is also because we normally write it this way, because if you write anything after this, then you could accidentally do that and make it messy and whatever else. So we usually put the square root the very last thing. And so this is just the order we usually write it. It's not any different, right? What is 4 times 3 is the same as 3 times 4, right? Commutative property. Yes? It doesn't matter. Focus on the point.
Now it looks like I is a variable. So yeah.
I knew that.
I is kind of a variable.
But then you have 3i.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do have 3i. That's right.
But what if I only have 2i?
Then you can see normal. You have depth perception. Okay. Oh.
Congratulations.
Let's do another example. And then we'll do a couple of guided practices. Numero dos. The square root of negative 216. Okay, so to simplify this, what are we going to do? Is it divisible by 4? Try it.
Yeah.
Okay, so sure, that sounds great. So let's start there.
Should we do
We should deal with this negative. What's going to happen because of that negative?
Should we do the lowest number that it goes into?
The biggest one.
You have to take away the -1 to make all that stuff.
We can do the square root of -1 times the square root of 4 times the square root of 54 is what y'all have said so far, right? Yes, no, maybe? Yes.
What if it was not a negative?
Then we wouldn't pull out the I. Kids, slow down, take a breath. All we're doing is dividing by perfect squares. That's literally all we're doing. And pulling out an I because of the negative. That's all we're doing. Because I equals the square root of -1. That's all we're doing. That's all we're doing here. Nothing else are we doing it right now. That's all we're doing. We're just pulling things out. We're just dividing. Okay. What's the square root of -1? What's the square root of 4? 2. So we've got 2i times the square root of 54. Are there any perfect squares that go into 54?
No.
Lies. Good try, though. 49 doesn't. No way, does it? 9 times what equals 54?
9 times 6.
9 times 6 equals 54. Okay. Emma. What's 54 divided by 49? Punch it on your calculator right now. Real quick. Real quick. So it's smaller, but you didn't get a whole number, right?
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah, okay. Maybe you were making a face about something else and I was confused. That's possible. I was trying to help, but I wasn't helpful. Sorry.
It's fine. Teachers aren't always correct.
That's true, they're not. Times the square root of 6. Bob, Baran. What's the square root of 9? 3. So we end up with 2 times 3 times I times the square root of 6 We follow where we came, where we got there? Yes, no, maybe?
Maybe yes, 3.
Okay.
2 times
It's times.
It is times.
What
times
reason?
I.
Because when we have a number next to a variable, it's times. Same thing with parentheses, same things with square roots. When we have one thing next to another thing without a plus or minus in between, it's times. It's a pattern, or possibly a pattern.
It doesn't matter which one goes first. Could be 3 times 2.
What's 2 times 3?
Same thing as 3 times 2.
True. What's 2 times 3? 6. So our final answer is 6i times the square root of 6.
Did you see that? The other one was 3 and a 3. This one's 6 and a 6.
I didn't make these ones up. All right, let's do a couple of guided practices. This is.
Stuck now.
Well, there you go. That's why the Beach Boys are awful. My wife loves the Beach Boys. I find them to be irritating at best. Most anything from the 60s is better music-wise than Beach Boys, in my opinion. I don't really like beach music. I find it irritating. I don't like that other group either that often gets mistaken for Beach Boys. I can't think of what they're called right now. It's escaping me. So, GP.
The one above the one.
Number 1. The Monkees are funny. I do like the Monkees, though. I like most British invasion groups, actually. GP number 1. Square root of negative 18. Ready, go. It up. Do we have questions on that? Okay, GP number 2. Is the square root of negative 125. Ready, go. What?
We're talking about I got right.
A YouTube street evangelist we watched made a video on it, so that's how I knew anything about it.
A YouTube street evangelist. A YouTube what? A YouTube. Yeah, and this is another example. Example 3.
Wait, where'd you get 6 from? I'm very confused.
I got 5i times the square root of 5. I've been showing it for like an hour and a half. Where have you been? You zoned out for a minute. Okay, welcome back. Okay, number 3. Instructions are still simplify. And the problem is negative 5i times 3i.
Oh, we're doing the opposite now?
Kinda. What do you mean, oh boy?
Oh boy.
If I told you to go back into your notes to Unit 0 and then do that one on your own, you could. But we're going to save us some time and walk through it together. So don't oh boy me. Okay. All right. What's negative 5 times 3?
Oh boy, what flavor?
What? Negative. One more time.
Negative 5 times 3.
That would be negative 15.
It would be negative 15. What's I times I? It's not 2i, it is stupid machine. You know, yeah, I squared.
Is that squared?
Yes. And from back in our notes from Unit 0, we know that I squared,
Negative 1.
I squared equals -1. It's okay, computer. I am not mad, just disappointed. Okay. In the post.
That box is not finished. That's really annoying me, really, really bad.
Then cry.
Okay. So, because of that, we can write that as -15 times -1, right? Which would be 15. So this problem simplified is 15. Wahoo. Waluigi. Okay. Number 4.
Number 4.
The square root of -6 times the square root of -15. So we can go the other way around, do the opposite like somebody said. Okay? And we can write this as the square root of -6 machine times, I think it was Amy, but I could be lying. Could have been Emma. Could have been Emily. I don't really know.
Emily, are you secretly Euclid, famous mathematician?
No. Not at all.
I would rather be Euclid than Pythagoras, because Pythagoras was a nutcase.
All Pythagoras cared about was triangles.
No, all Pythagoras cared, that's not true at all. Pythagoras didn't care about triangles even a little bit. All Pythagoras cared about was, well, that too, probably. No, all he cared about was whole number ratios. He did not believe that irrational numbers existed. He believed everything could be written as nice, neat, orderly, whole number ratios. Legend has that he essentially had he did essentially have a math cult. That was like a thing, right? Where they would go and bully the other math people and whatever. And a legend about him says that he was so adamant and so upset about this topic that he went and burned down the building of these other people with them inside of it. I don't know if that's true or not. It could be apocryphal, but he was definitely very serious about rational numbers. Yeah. Okay. So, what's -6? Pythagorean theorem has to do with triangles, but which is why you're thinking of that. But he was not triangle guy. No, he was rational number guy. Nobody. He probably did. He did write Pythagorean theorem, but that's not his thing. Okay, so what is -6 times -15? Well, grab a calculator and plunk it. It is +90, right? Because negative times negative.
So then you put it in the thing, blah, blah, blah.
What perfect square goes into 90?
9. And then,
Yes. So we can split this into the square root of 9 times the square root of 10. Excuse me.
and then
What's the square root of 9? 3. Why did they get...
Did we do something wrong or did they do something wrong?
Most likely they did something wrong, because you know how many books mistakes there
Yeah.
are?
Well,
Are you saying we're always right?
No, I'm just saying that the book is wrong a lot of times.
no, I don't think the book is necessarily wrong. They just did something in a different order.
That's weird. I don't like that.
Like, they shouldn't have got a different answer.
And I'm just trying to decide whether you really have to do it the way they did it,
No,
or whether you can do it the way we did it.
I like the way we did it.
We don't even
The way
know
we
what
did
he
it is
did.
way. I know, I don't
Although,
care.
is
That's
the final answer supposed to have an I?
No, it shouldn't have an I in it.
It shouldn't.
They get a, no, it shouldn't have an I in it. Why would it have an I in it?
Well, in this case, no.
Because if it's not.
No, they got negative 3 times the square root of 10. And I'm just trying to decide whether you have to.
Did you copy
I almost feel like you do, actually.
Did you copy down correctly?
No, I did it different because I was trying to make it easier to understand, but then I didn't think about that. And so I fooled myself. Okay, so this is not the right answer because what we have to do is this. We have to take we have to deal with these i's first. There's not gonna be. Okay? So the square root of negative 6 would be I times the square root of 6. Yes, yes. Don't sure me. Yes, good. There you go. Times I times the square root of 15, right?
Correct.
We follow me, ladies? Awfully quiet from over there. Looks decent, though.
Wait,
And then you just combine
that
like
next
terms.
question.
This is the same question.
Just different way?
Because we got to deal with these i's first before we can start doing stuff. We can't essentially just poof them like what we did. Okay? Now, I times I, right? What is I times I?
I squared, which is
I squared. And then we already said the square root of 6 times the square root of 15 is the square root of 90, right? We already did that. So we're going to jump straight to that step, right?
Wait, where'd the ice come from?
That's what I was asking you where that came from, whether you saw it or not. So right here, this one, it comes from the square root of negative 6 is I times the square root of 6 because of the negative. Does that make sense or no?
No, but I'll take your word for it.
At the first
Well, you can't just take my word for it.
the first few problems we did,
It's exactly right. It's like the first few problems that we did, right? So this is the square root of negative 1 times the square root of 6. Square root of negative 1 is I, right?
and then the I
Yep.
to the square root of 6.
Yep.
You skipped stuff.
Don't do that.
I have to. You're in Algebra 2. It's part of the program.
Oh, I was like, how would you get a negative answer? That's how, because the I squared.
What's I squared? Negative 1. So this is negative square root of 9 times the square root of 10. Right? And we jump straight to there because we already did it. So we end up with negative 3 times the square root of 10. The moral of that story is if you have a negative under the square root, you have to deal with it first. I totally did that on purpose to teach you a lesson. Looks big brain over here. Okay, let's do a couple GPs. GP number 3. Gilded pumpkin. Get it right. He didn't even hear me. No, it's gilded. No, golden is boring. Gilded makes you sound smart. Golden just makes you sound cocky.
And that's the point.
Times 4i. Ready, go. Girl power. Okay. Any questions on that one? Doesn't sound like it, but going once, going twice, sold to the American. There's GP number 4. Ready, go.
I'm American.
Yeah, it's a Looney Tune. And there was much rejoicing.
The problem is English is not a language.
English is not a language?
No, it's a bunch of languages in a trench coat beating up other languages for parts.
No, that's lies. Unless you make that claim about every single modern language.
I do.
Okay, well that's fine then. That's fine because There's not a single modern language that's not.
English is just the worst about it.
That's not true either. The origins of English are more central than many, so I don't know.
They're also very confusing.
Okay, any questions on this problem? No? Okay. Okay, good. Do you understand where it came from, Mr. I just messed it up.
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, good. Don't mess it up like that no more. All right, let's do example 5. Example 5. We already did example 4, so, there it is. So we are doing 5. This is true. This is how math works. Counting. Instructions say solve. You can. I have faith in you. You're abilitized. X squared plus 64 equals 0. Now, if this had a minus, stop it. If this had a minus right here, then this would be a difference of 2 squares, and we would know how to solve it, right? Because we would just do 2 sets of parentheses, square root of the first, square root of the second, plus and minus, move on with our lives, set each factor equal to 0. We end up with x equals positive and negative 8. But it's not a minus, so we can't do that. So the first thing we got to do is we got to get the x squared by itself, right?
Wait, what?
We're going to get the x squared by itself. Okay. So we're going to minus 64, right? So those 64s cancel. And we end up with x squared equals negative 64. What's the opposite of squaring something? Square root. So we're going to take the square root of both sides. Now, what? Did you say why? Because square root and square are opposites. And when we're trying to get rid of something, that's how we get rid of it.
Just divide by 2.
Because it's not multiplied. It's squared.
Oh.
Okay. So these cancel. Now the thing that you got to remember when you take the square root of both sides, this is if you're going to make a small careless mistake that's common, this is it right here. And you're going to forget that when you take the square root of both sides, you end up with plus or minus.
Oh, I never forget that.
Okay? So this is plus or minus the square root of negative 64. Now, to have a good and pretty proper answer, we need to simplify the square root of negative 64.
Yes.
Well, it would be 8i, right? Because we end up with x equals plus or minus the square root of negative 1 times the square root of 64. What's the square root of negative 1? I. What's the square root of 64? 8. So we end up with x equals plus or minus 8i. That is 2 answers, boys and girls, not just one.
Yeah.
Positive 8i and negative 8i.
If we write it like that,
Which is, what?
if we write it like that on that test, will we get it right?
Yeah.
If you don't write it, then you'll get it wrong.
Yeah. But it's important to note that it is 2 answers, which we expect because we're dealing with a quadratic. So expect 2 answers. We just didn't get it by factoring or some other method, right? What? A quadratic, right? Squared term. Mhm. Okay. What did it say? Tuesday? Yeah, perfect. Good.
No, it's Thursday.
Tuesday. We didn't get it practice?
We're going to do a guided practice, and then I'm going to assign you a little homework, even though we're not quite done with this lesson. Yeah, and then you'll do more homework later. GP number 5, right?
Number 5, yeah.
Okay.
He left. He was like, no, I'll have
4 y squared plus 100.
Is this guided practice or?
It's a guided practice. Number 5 equals 0. Ready, go. Don't make the same mistake twice, if possible. You told me I was a bad driver. I don't believe anything.
I only have faith in God.
So if the
What?
variable by itself,
Okay, start over because these people were yammering away.
I don't even have faith in myself, just the Lord.
if the variable isn't by itself, then you have to get it by itself.
Yes. Yes.
Lord, then you have faith
You
in
didn't tell
yourself
us that,
because
right?
he gives you faith.
I did say the first thing we have to do is to get the x squared by itself. I did say that. It did come out my mouth, but it's okay. That's why we do these, so we can identify places of confusion. More useful than just trying to tell you everything. Much more, in fact.
Just because it came out of your mouth doesn't mean you said it.
Also
Oh my
possible.
gosh. That does not
I
make
think
This is not a metaphysics class.
I didn't say it was metaphysics. I was referring to vomit. Okay. What?
I did plenty of that over the weekend, but
Go.
Wow.
What's the homework?
that's why I'm still behind on grading.
1 through 4.
No.
But that would not be the one.
What we're going to do is we're going to do page number 252.
See, there are two types of
3 through
sick
3
people.
even.
There's the normal and intelligent sick people, like you were, where you
Wait, what was the answer?
don't exert yourself while you're
It
sick.
was
Or you're my dad and decide to
plus or minus
redo the entire yard
Sorry.
with a respiratory infection,
It's a
which
science
made it
question,
worse.
but
Probably.
Yeah.
Number,
Wait, what's page? 2.
page number 252.
Who thinks to himself, man, I'm having trouble.
Numbers
Let's go kick up dust.
18 through
19.
22.
18 through 17.
Evens. And
Wait.
And
36 through 40 evens. Oh my gosh, it's not. It's like 6 problems. Calm down. That's like middle school level problem numbers.
Very easy.
Okay, kiddos.
One